everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We have a great show tonight. We have a really great presentation today. And here's the thing. When you have worked with someone before and you have that deep confidence in their knowledge and their delivery, you get so excited about a presentation from them. So we've got some great stuff coming up. First, though, I am going to share my screen. And some kind soul is going to tell me if I'm sharing the correct one. But again, everyone, welcome. This is our Kannico monthly webinar. I love you folks that have cameras on. No worries if you can't, if you're busy, that's fine. But it's so good to see people, see their expressions. So this is our August webinar. Super excited to have you here. This felt like a really good opportunity to do a check-in. And we're going to talk about the finances. So that's our check-in for today is where are we? And we have Jackie McLaughlin with us again. And we just love her. She's one of our go-to people when it comes to finances. And we have just not only a great relationship with Chazen, but such an appreciation for how they convey information to nonprofits and even just the mechanics of how they manage those nonprofit relationships. So we're going to get into that. Let me start by sharing my screen. So, reminder about us. I am Kirsten Stevens. I'm the founder of the Kannico Agency. I am a chartered advisor of philanthropy. That's a new certification, by the way. Always be learning, right? Lots of professional development keeps you on your toes. Board certified board consultant, certified fundraising executive, CFRE, certified in nonprofit management, and I'm also a certified professional coach. So there you go. Lots of little extra letters there. Unnecessary, but kind of fun to have. So what I wanted to cover in a moment, which is going to be important, is, and I've asked Jackie to give me 5 minutes of her time so that I could cover the GivingUSA statistics. So for those of you who are familiar with GivingUSA, this is a report that's published by them in connection with a number of researchers and the Lilly School of Philanthropy. And the report for 2025 came out a few weeks ago. And I purchased some materials. I've been doing a lot of research. I had a big presentation I did last week on this, and I want to share some of the data on that. So that's what we're going to start with, and then we're going to jump into Jackie's presentation. In the meantime, what do we do at Kannico? We do nonprofit formations and reinstatements, so all 501s, management and fractional monthly services, organizational audits, governance reviews, board and leadership training, strategic planning, philanthropic advising, and capacity building. And really what we do is give you peace of mind. All right. I also wanted to mention, because I know people sometimes have to drop off, and that's totally fine. I know you guys have things going on in your lives and in your busy days, but I wanted to just remind you of our upcoming webinar, which is going to be September 8th. It's always the second Tuesday of the month. It's from 11 a.m. to 12 Eastern time. And we have Laura Whitfield joining us. She's with Journey Coach Consulting, and we're going to talk about emotional intelligence. And this is a piece that I think is going to be so important because it connects to everything. It connects to your team, your board, your donors, your prospects. I mean, there is nowhere that this doesn't come into play. So she's going to help define it for us. She's going to coach us on how suppressing emotions is a losing business strategy. And we're going to talk about how low emotional intelligence is costing you money and board members. So that's coming up. Now, let's jump into GivingUSA. I have some really interesting stats for you. So this is a slide that they put together that you can purchase from GivingUSA. And it's going to give us some insight into what happened in 2025. What were Americans doing with their money? So first of all, giving went up to 617.2 billion. And adjusted for inflation, that's about 3%. So it is not a huge increase, but it's an increase nonetheless. So let's look at where the money came from. It came from individuals, 64 which was an increase over 2024. It came from foundations, 19%, 10% of giving by bequest, 7% giving by corporations. A couple of really interesting things that came through on this. Giving by corporations was low. However, over a 5-year span, it's up 60%, 60% from corporations. So we are seeing growth. We are seeing growth, which means, what does it mean? It just means we need to be nurturing those relationships and building new relationships. Bequests. Well, they're up 10%. They're the fastest growing source of revenue. 3 of the last 4 years have seen a 20% or higher growth in bequest giving. And here's what's really fascinating. We always think planned giving is for those big whales, right? 40% of bequest dollars came from estates under 10 million.
Okay. All right.
Under 10 million. Under 10 million. 40%, okay? 20% came from estates valued at 1 million or less. So before we jump to conclusions about our donors and about who might be a good candidate for a conversation about planned giving, those numbers tell a very interesting story, in my opinion. Okay, let's talk about my second point. 90% of individual gifts, so giving from individuals, the 64%, 90% of those gifts are $5,000 or less. The amount of the gift is $5,000 or less. So that is very, very significant. That means that we have to make a concerted effort to reach the everyday donor, what they call the everyday donor. That means the $100 a month, the couple $100 a month, the $1,000 annual gift, the $2,000 annual gift. We really, really need to be diversifying our efforts. The third point, donor advised funds. So in 2020, donor advised funds accounted for about 15% of individual gifts. Today, they account for 25%. So what does that mean? It means that gifts, 1 in 4 gifts is going through an intermediary. It is going through a donor advised fund. You should register on every DAF platform that you possibly can. You should make donor advised funds easy to recognize on your website, the language easy to recognize. Give them whatever information is needed, the name, the EIN. I mean, just make it as simple as possible. Let's see. Foundation giving. So what drove foundation giving? Well, what drives how much foundations give away? The markets, right? How did the markets do in 2025? They did really, really well. So foundations, they're typically with an S&P return of 13.4% in 2025. Their assets, just the value increased in their assets, which means that there was a tremendous amount of giving at the foundation level. So those are just some interesting little tidbits that I wanted to share with you based on, and if you'd like, I purchased this, I probably can't just send it out to everyone, but if somebody would like it, I'll send it to you quietly. So just drop me an email and I'll send you this, but you can also purchase it on the GivingUSA website. Okay. Does anybody have any revelations on this? Anything, Jackie, anything jump out at you on this?
Probably the biggest thing is that the level of personal giving that you talked about, Kirsten, because certainly, and some fundraisers have argued with me about this, but in 2026, the new tax rules that went into effect January 1 are going to make it more enticing for the everyday giver to give. So you talked about $5,000 per person. Maybe that will go up when it's more enticing. And then the other thing that you mentioned that I just can't hooray enough is diversifying the revenue stream between lots of different types of contributors.
Yeah, 100%. And we have, and then also, of course, things are governed by your local and regional tax reform. We have some stuff happening in Martin County that I've seen. It could really impact the funding to government services, which in turn is going to impact the funding that's distributed to agencies that are filling the gap. So All right. So thank you so much, Jackie. Now I can introduce you. Oh, and then also just a quick note, religion, human services, and education are the top three recipients of funding. Religion is actually it's up, but overall, if we look at a 5 to 10 year trend, it's going down slightly. So that's interesting. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the rest of 2026. All right. So today, from numbers to narratives, financial storytelling for nonprofit leaders with Jackie McLaughlin. Let me tell you a little bit about her for those of you who don't know her. She is a CPA with over 35 years of accounting experience, including 18 years dedicated to nonprofit organizations. And I apologize. I believe it's McLaughlin, not McLaughlin. Yes. Okay. I'm going to make sure I pronounce that properly. Starting her career at KPMG auditing tech startups, she advanced to audit leadership roles in Fortune 500 companies before transitioning to nonprofit financial management. At Chazen, Jackie oversees technical reviews, training, and financial reviews, ensuring nonprofits meet the highest standards of fiscal responsibility. An accomplished educator, Jackie spent 10 years as a top-rated instructor for the nation's largest CPA review provider and has taught financial tools and strategies to small business owners and CPAs. Her sessions empower professionals to innovate, lead with confidence, and drive positive change through strong financial foundations. And we know that Jackie does a lot of teaching and training. Her specialty is translating complex financial concepts into actionable insights for non-finance audiences. Her teaching approach emphasizes real-world examples and builds confidence in financial decision-making. She has presented at numerous state and regional nonprofit conferences and is known for making accounting accessible and engaging. Engage us. Engage us, Jackie.
I
In
can't
here.
wait, especially with this topic. So
Yes.
let me, if it's okay, let me take the screen share away from
Go right
you.
ahead. Yes, go right ahead. Now,
And
Jackie, I'm going
Kirsten,
to ask you on just from a housekeeping note,
mhm.
if you can just let us know how you want to handle questions, if you're good with
Oh, as we go along.
as we go. Perfect. So
So
we'll drop it in the chat and we'll monitor the chat for you. How's that?
I'll stop here and there, Kirsten, as well as
Perfect.
please interrupt me and ask if we have
Perfect.
anything.
Fabulous.
So I could see you. Oh, Tanaka, I'll ask you, am I properly screen sharing, Tanaka?
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Okay, so today we're going to talk about financial storytelling for nonprofit leaders. So this is a brand new topic we developed. I'm frankly pretty excited about it, and I'm going to tell you why. I want to start with a movie that probably everyone has seen, which is The Karate Kid. In that movie, Daniel moves to California. He's bullied, he lacks confidence, and he wants to learn karate so he can defend himself. Mr. Miyagi agrees to teach him, except he doesn't. Instead, he tells Daniel to wax cars, paint fences, sand floors, paint the house, and Daniel becomes frustrated because none of it looks like karate, so he explodes. And he says to Mr. Miyagi, I came here to learn karate, and all you've done is had me do chores. And then comes the pivotal moment in the movie when Mr. Miyagi says to Daniel, wax on, wax off. And in that moment, Daniel suddenly realizes that every repetitive moment he's been doing has been teaching him how to block punches. What really looked like meaningless work to Daniel actually had a purpose. And for all of you who are nonprofit leaders, financial statements look like meaningless work. But when you know how to interpret them, they can become more meaningful. Because here's the thing that makes me so excited. When you understand what these numbers are really teaching you, they become one of the most powerful leadership tools your organization has. Because, and here's the most important thing I'm going to tell you today, they don't just report the organization's past, they help to write the future. And that's what excites me about when you understand how to read them correctly. So, really quick, we've got some worksheets that if you want to take a quick photo of that scan, You can download some of these worksheets that will help you and walk you through how to do what we're about to talk about. So here's our learning objective, which are to recognize that data has the power to convey compelling narratives, understand the underlying reasons and context behind the numbers, learn that openness with data fosters confidence and stronger support, and transform data into stories and stories into practical steps. So let's get into this. Why should we tell stories? And by the way, this is where many accountants kind of miss the boat here because they just hand you a financial statement. We're going to show you one of those later. And then that's it. They walk away. They're missing the boat in terms of helping to tell that story. So why we tell stories is that stories help create meaning, they transfer knowledge, and they influence and persuade and drive action. So if we go back to the Karate Kid, which if you haven't guessed, we're going to during this whole presentation, and if I simply told you Daniel learned karate, that's information and it's pretty boring. But if I tell you about a lonely teenager who spends weeks waxing cars before discovering every movement was preparing him for something bigger, that's a story and you're going to remember it because it's got more meaning for you. So every good story has three basic components. Your main character wants something, they struggle to get it, and in that struggle, they change in the process. So let's look at Daniel's story. What did he want? He wanted confidence and to stop being bullied and to believe in himself. What was his struggle? Endless practice, frustration, doing work that didn't seem to matter. And how did he change? He became disciplined, he got confidence, and he became patient. So what does all this have to do with a nonprofit? This. A nonprofit's struggle is to fulfill its mission and to remain financially sustainable. I'm sorry, that's its want. A nonprofit wants to sustain its mission and to remain financially sustainable. All nonprofits, or many, I shouldn't say all, but many nonprofits are having some struggles to do that. And the struggles that they're going through are limited funding, staffing shortages, inflation, competing priorities. So what has to change if you're following the model here? It's generally not the mission. In fact, it's usually never the mission. It's the decisions everybody on this call are making every day. Because if you keep making the same decisions, you're going to get the same result. Now, context gives the story meaning, the who, what, when, where, why, and what. So again, going back to the Karate Kid, Mr. Miyagi never explained to Daniel why he was waxing cars. Without the context, it looked pointless. The context changed everything. Financial statements work in the exact same way. Without context, saying that your revenue's down 15% is just a number and it's boring. But if you combine that with what's happening in the organization, it tells a completely different story. So if I'm picking on a membership organization, maybe revenue's down because membership retention is down. And if membership retention is down, event attendance and sponsorships are most likely going to be down. Now, as leaders, you can draw a conclusion from that, which is what? Your members aren't finding value in some of your offerings. And how can I say that with such confidence? Because people put money behind what they value. Hard stop. And earlier on in the social media frenzy that we had, I don't know, 10 years ago, I would always argue with the marketing people because they would tell me, and this was my life before Chazen, they would tell me about all the likes and follows and so forth that they had, which is great, but it wasn't translating into additional contributions into the organization. So in that regard, likes, follows, views, it just didn't matter if it's not going to translate into contributions. Now, where your financial reports can come in handy is they provide the data and the context. So imagine watching only the last 5 minutes of Karate Kid when Daniel wins the tournament. So what? It wouldn't mean much because you missed everything leading up to that moment. Financial statements are no different. The numbers are the ending. The real story is the decisions, the events, and the circumstances that produce those numbers. And that's because everything you do in your organization has a financial consequence. Absolutely everything. Some nonprofit leaders will argue that with me and say, Jackie, we have a lot of volunteers. That doesn't have a financial consequence. Yes, it does. Because if you didn't have volunteers doing something, you'd probably have to pay somebody else to do it. So it does have a financial consequence. And your financial statements, which is why many, many people who aren't accountants and aren't me who get very passionate about this, many people think they're boring because financial statements tell you the historical trends, but they also tell you what your actions have been, what your decisions have been, and what your priorities have been. They tell you all that. And if they don't look the way you want them to look, that means you have to start doing something different because the future will always equal the past unless you make changes. So the financials write the story, they give you the context. How did you get here where you are today? The problem is that to make it interesting and passionate like me, you have to combine those numbers with the story. And that's one of the challenges that accountants face. We have to not just present numbers because your eyes are going to glaze over and you're not going to care. But if we can bring those numbers to life with the story, now you care and it helps you make better decisions. So this is what good storytelling looks like: data, context, implication, and action. And again, if we go back to Karate Kid, Daniel waxing a car, that's just data. Mr. Miyagi explaining what it meant, now that's context. Realizing that those movements would stop a punch, that's the implication. And winning the tournament and confidence, that's action. And that's exactly what we should do with financial statements. So here's the data that starts it all, something that all of you should be getting every month. In my perfect world, you would. So your statement of activities, which heretofore, to sound like a lawyer, I will call an income statement or a P&L, because most of us are more familiar with that verbiage. In the profit world, it's a P&L. In the nonprofit world, it's statement of activities. That tells you what happened this year. Or as I like to say in the world of professional athletes, the P&L is a professional athlete's season stat. Tells you how you performed, just like those season stats do. The statement of financial position, which I will call a balance sheet going forward. Balance sheet's the for-profit term. Statement of financial position is the nonprofit term, but most of us are more familiar with balance sheet. In the world of professional athletes, the balance sheet is the career stats, and that tells you about the stability and strength of your organization. Your statement of cash flow showed you how your money moved, and that speaks to sustainability. Now, I mentioned that data is boring without context. So in your organization, you can give that data context. And maybe, and this is going to be different for every organization, maybe the context is your current year data compared to your last year's data at the same time. Maybe your context is your current year data versus your budget. Always your context should include your mission. How are you doing financially? What are you working on relative to your mission? And sometimes, especially in the last year and a half, the context can also be the external forces, particularly if you're grant funded, government grant funded. So this is where the storytelling framework begins. And I've said this a lot because it's important. The same actions, decisions, and priorities will produce the same results. Different results require analysis and acceptance of hard facts. Let me give you an example of this. I had an executive director told me how their new fundraising person was killing it, just best year ever, and ranting and raving about how great their fundraising person was doing. Then I brought out the P&L and showed that in fact contributions were down. Not that I was trying to be negative about the fundraising person, but those were the hard facts. And this executive director had to accept those hard facts. It's also going to take courage and creativity and a willingness to learn and fail. And I'm about to give you a real life example from when I worked for a membership organization, some changes that we made based on the data that the story told us. And as I'm explaining those changes and going through it with you, I'll let you know the courage that it took. That we called her president at the time. We didn't use executive director, but I'll let you know the courage that that executive or president needed to execute some of these changes that we made, and her willingness to fail and learn, to try something new and see if it worked. So here we go. I'm going to get into the case study. This is a real case study. As I get into the financial statements, just know that I've changed all the numbers to protect, confidentiality. The story's real, the numbers are fake. So this membership organization had been in existence for 100 years. When I got there, it had had 10 years of consistent losses, and it had eaten up all its reserves in the 10 years of consistent losses. So it was headed for bankruptcy. So number one thing that our president had to accept the hard facts around was that we were headed for bankruptcy, because she had had it in her mind that this organization had been around for 100 years. It can't go bankrupt. Yes, it could. And that's where it was headed. So she had to accept those facts.
All the way back to your right.
Now here is, and don't worry, I'm sure this is going to make your eyes glaze over, but it's going to get better. If you just focus on the total column, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 to the right, heading to the left. If you focus on the total, that's 2025. When I got there, this is what the financial statement showed, was just the total. It didn't compare it to the 2024 total, and it didn't break out the total into what went into that total. So you really only saw two columns, 2025 total, 2024 total, when I got there. What the team did, is we pulled apart that 2025 total and we looked at what went into it. So on the far left, you can see the first column is, it's abbreviated, membership revenue and expenses, by the way. Notice that we pulled apart all the revenue and expenses and we put them in buckets. In this example, we had done 4 events during the year, and we created a P&L for each of the 4 events. And then we also offered from some service lines that had nothing to do with the events. Now, this was incredibly important, because if you drop to the bottom in the red area and you focus in on the events, you could see that 2 of the 4 events were losing money. And they were consistently losing money every year for 10 years. You can also see that the service lines were losing money as well. So here comes the courage. Let's talk about the events. When we did this analysis and found that the same 2 events were losing money year in and year out, we made the case that we had to stop doing them. And this was incredibly nerve-wracking for the president, because we had been doing these events for decades and decades and decades. And when I explained to her that we needed to stop doing 2 of these 4, and instead we had to redirect those resources into the other 2 that were making money and make them bigger, better, and better, not just redirect the monetary resources, but redirect the people and the labor resources, she had a little bit of a, what I like to call a freak out moment. But she was an incredibly brilliant, cutting edge leader. She sat on it for a while, and she did decide to cut out 2 of those 4 events. And we did exactly that. And we put the money and the resources into making the 2 events that were remaining bigger, badder, and better. And what happened skip to the end on the event side of it. What happened is that the two events we continued doing became more profitable. And in 1 year, we turned around 10 years of losses into break even, which doesn't sound like much because it's like, oh, Jackie, what's the big deal? You break even because that's a start. You also eat an elephant one bite at a time. So we had to start with break even until we could get to profitability. The other thing we did is look at this service line. It lost 85K in this example. What had happened with this service line is it had had a primary funder who decided to stop funding it. But again, we had done this for years and years and years, and it never occurred to anybody, maybe we need to stop this. It never occurred to anybody until we told the story. And no, I did not present this ugliness to the president. I told the story in a more effective way, which we're going to get to that in a minute too. And then finally, the last thing we did is we saw that membership retention was declining year after year after year. So once again, we went to the data and we went to our membership database. We downloaded the data, we sliced it, we diced it every way possible. How did we know what we were doing? We didn't. We just said, what's the consistent data we have about these members? We sliced it and diced it by zip code, by industry, by number of employees, any way that we could. And what the data told us, the story it told in slicing and dicing, was that there were two industries that accounted for the bulk of our membership. This was incredibly amazing information because now we took the membership development team and we focused them on those two industries. Within a year, we had less members, which again, at that period of time, and the president went out on a limb here, this particular membership organization prided itself on the number of members. We had to talk that through and say, well, listen, you could have 1 million members if 999,000 of them aren't paying. It doesn't matter. So the number of members doesn't matter. The revenue matters. So our membership numbers declined, but our revenue went up. So in a 12-month period, this president did things that took a huge amount of courage. She redirected her membership development team to focus on two primary industries, and she cut out 2 of the 4 major events the organization did that year. This created a lot of marketing issues, as you can imagine. Marketing had to communicate like crazy with the members to let them know what was happening, et cetera, et cetera. But she had the courage, and that's why that previous slide was so important about how it takes courage and creativity. She had the courage to do it, and it successfully went in her way. Now, if I had just given her this, her eyes would have glazed over and she wouldn't have cared anything that I was saying. But you can see, hopefully you can see, as I told you, there was a story behind these numbers, and the story is what grabbed her attention and helped her look at and digest these numbers. So part of the story is you've got to provide chapters and context. So the before case study here is that event expenses decreased 30%. That's like saying Daniel waxed 10 cars. Who cares? Now, the after part of the story I didn't tell you is that in one major event we did, we changed the venue and we brought it from a high cost of living area. It wasn't New York, but like New York City, we brought it from a high cost of living area and we relocated it to a low cost of living area like Omaha, Nebraska. It wasn't that one, but like that kind of area. So our event expenses decreased 30% just because of the change in venues. So again, the point to this slide is ho-hum event expenses decreased 30%. Who cares? But when you understand they decreased 30% because we changed the venues, now it gets a little bit more interesting. Again, another, slab of numbers that most people's eyes glaze over. But here's the story that these numbers tell you. In the red, the story they tell you is that this fictitious organization with the numbers I made up here are letting you know that if all revenue stops coming in today and you make no more revenue, this organization can pay their bills for 3 months. That's the story behind that slide of numbers you just saw. This organization can pay their bills for 3 months if everything goes south. That's important information to have and a better story. Now, I mentioned earlier that on those spreadsheets and numbers I just showed you, that was not what I gave the president. We created visuals because visuals make the story resonate with people. And I should probably take a breath. Kirsten, is there anything in the chat?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not
So
yet, but we'll get there, I'm sure.
Okay, so visuals make the story resonate, and I could see a bunch of you taking a big sigh of relief. Oh, thank goodness, we're not going to see spreadsheets. We hate those. Okay, this is really small, but don't worry, I'm going to blow it up. I just put this before and after on here to show you how visuals can really make a difference and be more impactful. And in fact, for this president I've been telling you about, who was a very creative, courageous woman, when I was showing her the spreadsheet on the left, I lost her completely. But when I turned the spreadsheet on the left into the visuals on the right, now I had her attention. And this, I just blew this up for you. It's the visual that was on the right in the previous slide. But you can see this is showing you at a glance that revenues are going down. Now, I just told you, and I'm going to show you another slide, it was revenues from events and from membership that caused this decrease. But at a glance, you can see, oh, that's not good. Revenue went down. And you can also see expenses went down, thank goodness. And I'm going to show you another visual slide that will show you which expenses went down. And although the organization was still at a loss, so change in net assets is the nonprofit term for your net revenue or net loss. Although in 2025 it's showing a negative 50K, it got better because in 2024 it showed a negative 75K. So the numbers, although sad, are going at least in the right direction. Now, again, in my real life example, we went to break even after 12 months.
I have a question.
So this,
So going back to that slide just now, are the financial worksheets that are downloadable, do those teach us how to take the data and convert it into something like that?
Yes.
Or is that a fairly straightforward process?
The answer is both, because in Excel, you can use Excel to create these charts pretty easily.
Okay.
And I mean, I'm a terrible, believe it or not, you can all make fun of me. I'm a terrible Excel user, and even I could make these charts. So it's pretty easy.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So this particular slide dissects the revenue. So you could see here, membership dues went down significantly. The event revenue went down as well, et cetera, et cetera. So this helped the president, helped the board see where we were losing money. And this particular slide dissects the expenses as well. You can see salaries went up. You can also see they didn't go up that much, which means we weren't hiring new people. We were just giving existing staff increases. And then look at this huge, oh, sorry, I'm starting at the bottom here. Second up from the bottom, you can see this huge decrease in event expenses, which again, if you combine the context, which is we went from a high cost of living area to a low cost of living area, now it gets more interesting. So this slide helps you understand at a glance where the expenses are going in the right direction or the wrong direction. And you can see at the very tip top here, program expenses increased. So that's kind of going in the wrong direction. Program expenses were that service line I talked about. So that's a bad increase when one of our funders cut their funding on that. So if we put it all together, and this is just a reminder slide, not anything for you to dig deep into, the financial statements told us that you have 3 months of expenses on hand if all revenue were to stop coming in right now. You can pay your bills for 3 months. The P&L told us that 2 out of your 4 events are losing money, and they've been consistently losing money. That's what's important. I didn't have enough slide to show you that. But if this were only year 1 of those losing money and all previous years they had been making a lot of money, now we have very different questions to ask ourselves. What did we change in this last year that caused us to lose money when we've historically been making money? And I like to compare these questions to, and also these reviews to professional athletes again. And I like to pick on LeBron James. LeBron James looks at footage of his game within 24 hours of playing it. If LeBron waited until the end of a season, he would not get a renewal on his contract. I promise you that. Because at the end of the season, he doesn't have time to bob and weave and course correct. By looking at his film footage after every game, he can immediately see what did he do right, what did he do wrong, correct what he did wrong, and do more of what he did right. And that's in my real life example, that's what we tried to do with these events. We knew we were doing 2 events correctly. Let's do them better and make more money doing them. And the other thing, again, going back to my LeBron, the other thing that's important to illustrate that context is if LeBron just had stats, you'd go, okay, well, whatever his points on the board are, big deal. But the context is maybe he put more points on the board in a year than Michael Jordan ever did. Well, Michael Jordan's our context. We knew that at one time he was one of the greatest basketball players ever. And if LeBron's beating Michael's records, we have context for that. So if you look at the executive summary, and by the way, in real life, I would never present it this way, but my slide causes me to have space issues. I would never present an executive summary this way. I would present it in a storytelling format. So what happened here, the story is that revenues declined 17%, but expenses declined 18%. That's good. Expenses declined because of those event costs, which we reduced by going from high cost of living to low cost of living. What's really important to leaders and boards and governance organizations is that based on the story the data told us, we had to struggle, going back to the storytelling, and change. And the struggle was we had to cut out 2 of our 4 events. We cut out that service line that had been consistently losing money. We reallocated our resources to the 2 events that made money. And again, both monetary resources and staff resources. We reallocated. We focused our membership development team on those high value segments for our membership dollars. And in doing all this and looking forward, we were projecting 10% revenue growth, 7% expense reduction, and a surplus in 2026. The other magical thing that happened with all of this is that being a membership organization, our mission was to educate and promote the particular industry we were in. When we moved from high cost of living to low cost of living event spaces, our attendance increased. You didn't see that in the revenues because we also had to decrease the cost of a ticket, which we could do, and cost of our sponsorships, which we could do because we were in a lower cost of living area. But by doing all that, we got greater attendance, which was consistent with the mission. We helped educate and promote more organizations in our membership association. Don't forget, all of you have plenty of opportunities to tell the story. Don't just throw numbers at people. I threw them at you. They were boring. You all thought they were boring. I know you did. But when I told the story, they got interesting. So your annual report, tell the story. Here's something no one ever thinks about. Your 990, which everybody, including me, hates. We all hate doing this, but it is a great opportunity to tell your story, because in the 990, you have to talk about the programs you did in the last year and how the programs did and the outreach and the impact that you have. So if you spend some time writing this for your accountant, it can become a marketing tool, because fundraisers have told me that many donors do pull your 990 off the public record data, if particularly if they're going to give larger amounts. You may do impact reports. And, back to my social media story, absolutely, you can push it out in your digital marketing and any audience specific communication that you might do. So you have lots and lots of opportunities to tell the story and back it up with hard objective evidence from your financials. So, common pitfalls to avoid, which I did a little bit of this to you on purpose: data overload. Uh, Leaders do not want to get into how much you spent on office supplies this year versus last year. They don't care. You have to hit the highlight with leaders. Again, I learned a lot working for the president. I keep talking about this brilliant woman, learned a whole lot. I couldn't bog her down in office supplies. She did not like that. But at a high level, when I talked to her about membership retention and the events weren't making money, now I had her interest. Always have context. And I illustrated with LeBron James and Michael Jordan how important context is. Never provide numbers without an explanation. And also, it's really nice if you can come up with a reporting format and do that consistently month in and month out, because it's difficult for non-numbers people to keep looking at different formatting every single month and also understand what the numbers are saying, because their brains are trying to go, wait, what is this report? I've never seen it before. So certainly, I talked about trial and error. It comes in here when you're providing somebody with, maybe you want to redo your reports. All right, provide new reports. As I like to say, throw spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks. But once you get the feedback that what you're providing is mostly what they're looking for, keep the formatting the same over and over and over again, so that people can focus on the numbers and not understanding the formatting. So the key takeaways, as you can see, I'm probably the only one I know who gets really passionate about financial statements, because I have the benefit of being able to translate them into a story. And the example I always love to give is, if you give me War and Peace written in Russian, I have no idea what it says. I need somebody to translate that Russian version of War and Peace so I can understand it. As nonprofit leaders, unless you happen to be an accountant, but barring that, the accountants often ask you to read War and Peace in Russian, and you can't do it. So if we learn to translate that Russian War and Peace into English, now it becomes interesting and it becomes something that you can be passionate about, because your financial statements are telling the story of your organization. And you need to focus on the why. Why are the numbers the way they are? So dovetailing back into my membership organization, why was the overall organization losing money every year? Because 2 out of the 4 events, no one cared about anymore. How do I know that? They weren't paying for them. If they don't pay for them, they don't care about them. As a nonprofit, you've got to be transparent. And here's what I found about governance. Don't be afraid to show the governance your numbers if they're not going in the direction you want. Be prepared to have a plan for how you're going to course correct. Again, that's what LeBron does after every game. When he watches what he did wrong that previous game, he's got a course correction plan for the next game. And also pull actionable insights out of what your numbers are telling you. And I keep repeating this over and over, but it's so important. The actionable insights we pulled, get rid of 2 events. Very courageous thing to do, but it worked. Start chasing the members who value what we offer. How do I know that? Because they were paying us for it. Stop chasing the members who clearly didn't value what we offer and chase those who do. So, in conclusion, at the beginning of this presentation, I told you about Daniel waxing cars. And at first he thought those repetitive motions had no purpose. But by the end of the movie, he realized that they had prepared him for everything that mattered. And that's my hope for you today, is that you'll leave looking at the financial statements a little bit differently. They're not the reports you have to slog through in board meetings. They're equivalent to your organization's wax on, wax off. They build the insight you need to lead your organization with confidence. The goal isn't to produce better financial statements. And here's the impactful statement I'm about to make. The goal is to produce better decisions, and they can help you produce better decisions.
I have a question for
That's
you.
it. Yes,
Do you serve on a board yourself?
I did. I don't currently, but I did. And
So,
have.
okay. What should the relationship be between the person who is using the data to tell the story? So let's assume it's an executive director. And what would their board member counterpart look like? And how closely should those 2 individuals be working? I guess that's my question.
Love
Because this should
this
not
question.
fall on the executive director alone. It's a
No,
huge burden.
the board is, I like to think of the board as consultants. So the executive director is the one making the day-to-day operational decisions, and the board is checking their decisions, and not every decision. So, for example, the staff and the executive director will usually put together the budget. But as all of you know, the board has to approve it. And your opportunity in that is to just double check the assumptions that your staff was making. And I'll give you a very silly example as to why this is important. When all of us were in high school or college and we had to write a paper that was really important to that particular class, we would always have somebody look at it before we turned it in, because maybe the sentence in the paper was, "I saw a bug." But I've looked at it so many times, I miss the fact that what the sentence really said was, "I saw bug." I forgot to put the word "a" in there, and my brain never noticed that because I was so familiar with what I was trying to write. So a second individual reviewing my work would be able to say, "Hey, Jackie, did you forget the word "a" in this sentence?" "Oh, yeah, I did." Well, that's very similar. Again, very silly example, but it's very similar. Your executive director and your staff are so into the weeds that they could, and we're all humans, we all make mistakes. They could honestly have overlooked an important fact or assumption because they've looked at this so many times and they're so in the weeds, they just don't see it. And that's the board's job, is to point that out. Also, it's the board's job to set a threshold. So you approve a budget. Yes, yes, yes. There's always things that come up, always, that you didn't anticipate. You set a threshold that anything that wasn't budgeted for over 10,000 or 50 or whatever the right number is has to go back through the board and be approved.
That's right. That's
But
right.
boards are like consultants, and your executive director and your staff execute.
What a beautiful way to put that. Thank you. And they have expertise and they have knowledge, and we should be able to lean on them. So fantastic. We had a question. What software do you recommend for managing and analyzing your donors members database?
So that's not in our wheelhouse, the member and donor database.
Mm,
So
okay.
I mean, we have clients who use different things. I don't know if one's any better than the other,
What about
but
just a
they're,
donor database? Any that you're familiar with that you know people have good success with? No, not really. Okay. Not in a
I
position to
mean, at a
comment.
higher price point, I think
Yeah.
Blackbaud is one of them.
Mm,
But
hmm.
no,
But
we
ultimately,
get
QuickBooks is where your data is going to be, your financial data should be living or something
it.
similar, right?
It is, but QuickBooks isn't going to, because I talked in the presentation about how we analyze the demographics of our
Mm,
members.
hmm.
QuickBooks doesn't hold demographic
Correct. Fair
information.
enough.
So
Yeah.
it's so important to have a donor or member database
Hmm.
so that you have the
Thank you.
demographics.
Okay.
And I should say, by the way, going back to that demographic analysis, it was not our advancement people who did it. I love advancement
Mm,
people. They're wonderful. I couldn't do their jobs, but typically they're not great at analyzing data.
mm, mm,
Typically, could be
hmm.
grossly generalizing. So it was our team, the finance accounting team, who sliced and diced the data. But then
Hmm.
this is where the partnership can be beautiful. We gave the data to the advancement team, who then had a nice target
Hmm.
for them to go after and make their magic happen.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Excellent. Great. Any other questions? Don't forget to scan this. And also, we put the link and Tanaka pinned it. Thank you, Tanaka. I just want to shout out Tanaka, Adam, Needy, Takur, Chidi, Austin. Without them, these wonderful webinars would not be happening. Jackie, that was fantastic. So great to have you speaking to us again and reminding us about the storytelling piece and that it's not just a overwhelming spreadsheet. There's so much there that can be, right? There's so much that can be derived from from that information. And are there still seats available to the event in October? Do you know, Jackie? There's a wonderful event happening in
I thought there
October.
was, and
Jackie is going to be there. Yeah.
it's the Broward Foundation, isn't it,
Is
Kirsten?
it? I think it's the Broward Center for Nonprofit Excellence, I believe.
I think you're
Isn't that
correct.
who's hosting it? I'm going to see if I can quickly grab the link to that. But you can see her live and in person if you're in Broward. Um, let's see. I don't have it. I can't seem to pull it up. Anyway, we'll share that on social media. We'll share the link to that. But Jackie, thank you again so much. Let me see if do we have any other questions from anyone? No? Okay. Yes, Marlene. Oh, is the system to calculate your months of cash on hand in the download? Okay, can I just say that was the coolest thing. And I think that's something that needs to be shared at every board meeting. This is how many months we have at our current burn rate if nothing else comes in, right? Like that's something
Hmm.
that needs to be discussed. Um, so is that system in the download? Does everyone see the link, by the way? The link is at the very top. It's pinned at the top in the chat. So even if you weren't able to scan it, the link is there. Um, is that information, how to do that? Is that in the download somewhere, Jackie?
Um, I don't believe it's in the download, but Kirsten, I think I usually provide you with a copy of the
Yeah.
presentation, so it will be in there.
Let me share my screen again. Pay from card. Okay, so does everyone see Jackie's email address? We have a couple of inquiries in the chat regarding reaching out to you for accounting services, getting your email address. We put that in the chat as well. But really, we would love for you to get in touch with Jackie. So feel free to do that. Jackie, thank you again. Can't wait to see you in October.
I'm
It's going to
very
be great.
excited, and thank you so much, everybody, for spending this hour with me, and Kirsten for having me.
It's a pleasure. Can't wait to get you back. All right. Just a reminder, our upcoming webinar on September 8th from 11 to 12, Laura Whitfield, we're going to be talking about emotional intelligence. Thanks, everyone, so much for being with us. We love doing these, and we're here for you. Anything that you need, just go ahead and reach out. All righty. Thanks all. Have a wonderful day. 12:01. Woo!
Perfect.
Love it. All right. Everybody can get back to their day. Thank you so much. Appreciate you all. Good to have you with us. Thanks again, Jackie.